hum of the ship's engines reverberated through the silent corridor as the human soldier made his way to the command deck. The war had raged for years, and the pressure weighed heavy on his shoulders. The Alliance forces had been struggling, but today, a fragile hope flickered in the air. They had received an unexpected ally, a small faction of rebel aliens who had been fighting against the Empire that sought to dominate the galaxy. He wasn't special. Just another soldier like thousands of others, trained to fight, to survive. His name didn't matter, not in the grand scheme of things. He wasn't a leader, and he didn't have any great talents. But what he did have was determination. He fought because it was the only thing he knew. The battle was set to take place at the edge of the Cretan system, a strategic area that both sides desperately wanted to control. The Empire's fleet was massive, and the Alliance's forces were outnumbered. But for some reason, today felt different. Maybe it was the weight of the moment, the final push, the last chance for victory. Or maybe it was just the adrenaline coursing through his veins. As the soldier strapped his helmet on and joined his squad, the tension in the air was thick. The ship's command center buzzed with activity, crew members shouting orders and checking coordinates. He felt the familiar nervousness in his stomach, the gnawing sense of uncertainty that never quite left him before a big fight, but he pushed it down, focusing on the task ahead. "We'll make it through this," one of his squad mates said, clapping him on the back. The soldier just nodded, though he wasn't so sure. They had fought countless battles before, and they all seemed to end the same way. Survival was never guaranteed. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, and soon they were in the heart of the Cretan system. The enemy's warships loomed like shadows against the stars, their massive guns pointed in every direction. The human soldiers had no illusions. This would be a brutal fight, but they were used to that. They had been trained for it. As they engaged the enemy, explosions erupted all around him. The ship's shields flickered under the onslaught, and the soldier gritted his teeth, steadying himself against the tremors. He could hear the sounds of combat over the comms, yelling, the crackling of lasers, and the distant rumble of explosions. It was chaos, pure chaos. Suddenly an explosion rocked his ship, sending the soldier tumbling across the deck. He grunted as he hit the floor, disoriented for a moment. His head throbbed, but there was no time to recover. The battle raged. He pushed himself to his feet, adjusting his weapon and running toward the nearest gun turret. "Get to your stations!" a voice shouted over the comms. "We need cover fire now!" He followed orders, positioning himself by the turret. The enemy's ships were everywhere, and the air was thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. The soldier gritted his teeth, aiming his weapon at the enemy craft. He squeezed the trigger, sending bolts of energy streaking toward the approaching ships. But just as he aimed at another target, a massive shadow passed over him. A larger ship, unlike anything he had seen before, appeared out of nowhere. It was sleek and dark, with strange markings along its hull. His heart skipped a beat. He recognized it instantly. It was the flagship of the alien queen herself. The queen was a legend. She was known throughout the galaxy for her ruthless leadership, and no one had ever dared challenge her. She commanded the Empire's forces with an iron fist, and no one had ever seen her lose a battle. Her ship, her presence, was enough to send fear through even the bravest of warriors. The soldier's hand trembled on the turret controls. The queen's ship was heading straight toward his position. The enemy fleet seemed to part like a sea before her, as if the queen's arrival signaled the end of the fight. The soldier knew he had no chance against such power. But then something unexpected happened. The queen's ship was struck by enemy fire directly in the heart of its defenses. Her ship began to spin wildly, smoke billowing from the ruptured hull. The soldier's eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't have imagined it. The queen was vulnerable? How could that be? Before he could process what was happening, a group of enemy ships surrounded the queen's flagship. There was no time to think, only to act. The soldier's instincts took over. Without hesitation, he launched a desperate counterattack, aiming to protect the queen's ship from the incoming fire. His heart pounded in his chest as he fired at the enemy ships, watching them explode into a cloud of debris. It was an impossible situation. Yet, somehow, he managed to hold his ground, pushing back the attackers one by one. His mind raced as he realized he was doing the unthinkable. He was saving the life of the most feared ruler in the galaxy. In the midst of the battle, the soldier saw her, the queen herself, standing in the command deck of her ship. Her eyes locked on him. He could barely make out her expression through the smoke and debris, but there was something in her gaze, something that left him frozen in place for a brief moment. The queen's ship was on the verge of collapse, and yet her focus was entirely on him. Time seemed to stretch as the soldier continued to fire, unsure of how long he could keep this up. But in the end, he succeeded. The attackers were driven off, and the queen's ship managed to retreat to safety, though barely intact. The soldier stood there, breathless and shaken, as the battle around him slowly began to settle. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He had saved the queen's life, the most dangerous being in the galaxy. And now he had no idea what would come next. The soldier woke up in a medbay, the soft hum of machines filling the air. His body ached, every muscle screaming from the battle. He slowly opened his eyes, blinking as the harsh light above him made his head spin. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. His mind was foggy, disoriented.
"Easy there, soldier,"
a voice said softly. The soldier turned his head, seeing a medic standing beside him, adjusting a monitor. The medic's face was calm, but there was an edge of urgency in his voice. "You're lucky to be alive." The soldier tried to speak, but his throat was dry, his voice barely a whisper. "What happened?" he croaked. "You saved the queen," the medic replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "We've been hearing about it all across the fleet. Everyone's talking about you. You're a hero." The soldier's heart skipped a beat. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't even understand how he'd pulled it off. He had just acted on instinct, trying to stop the attack. But the queen's ship, her flagship, was a target, and somehow he had protected her. He could barely remember the details, the flashes of fire, the burning ship, and then the queen's piercing gaze, locked on him in the middle of it all. The memory made his stomach tighten. How had he ended up in this position? He was just a soldier, an ordinary human, fighting in a war. The thought of saving the life of the galaxy's most feared leader seemed impossible. "Rest up," the medic said, seeing the confusion in his eyes.
"You'll be back on your feet soon enough. The battle's over, but your story's just beginning."
As the medic turned and left the room, the soldier lay back against the soft bed, staring up at the ceiling. The words echoed in his mind. "You saved the queen." He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something bigger at play. This wasn't just about a battle. It was about something that could change the entire course of the war. Days passed, and though the soldier was technically recovering, the mystery surrounding his actions gnawed at him. He kept replaying the events of that day over and over in his mind, trying to piece together what had really happened. Why had the queen's ship been so vulnerable? Why had she been there at all, leading the attack when her forces were already so powerful? The news of his actions spread quickly, and soon his name became known throughout the fleet. People called him a hero, a savior, but none of that mattered. The soldier didn't feel like any of those things. All he felt was confusion and a strange sense of responsibility that he couldn't explain. Then, one day, a transmission came through. It was a direct message from the queen. His heart skipped in his chest when he saw the message. Alert. The queen herself had sent a communication to him. He had no idea what to expect, but a mix of curiosity and fear overwhelmed him. The transmission was brief, but every word carried weight. The queen spoke calmly, her voice cold but not unkind.
"I remember you," she said.
"The one who saved me. I need to speak with you in person."
"If you are willing, I will arrange a meeting.
The soldier's mind raced.
He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Why would the Queen, someone so important, so powerful, want to speak with him? What did she want? His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the screen, trying to make sense of her words. The thought of meeting the Queen sent a chill down his spine. He had no doubt that she was a brilliant strategist and a deadly enemy. But there was also something about her that he couldn't place. A strange, magnetic presence. He had felt it when their eyes met in the middle of the battle. The Queen was not just a ruler. She was something far more complex. And he didn't know if that made her more dangerous or more fascinating. The soldier had no choice but to accept. There was no backing out now. Whether he liked it or not, his life had taken an unexpected turn. He had saved the Queen's life, and now she wanted to meet with him. He couldn't deny the importance of the moment. A few hours later, he was on his way to the meeting. He was escorted to a secure location, a place away from the eyes of his comrades. The journey felt long, and the closer he got, the more the weight of the situation pressed down on him. He had no idea what would happen next. Was he being summoned to face punishment for his actions, or was this a chance for something more? The meeting took place on a neutral planet, one that had remained untouched by the war. The soldier was led to a grand hall, its towering architecture unlike anything he had ever seen. It felt ancient and alien, as if the very walls carried the weight of centuries of history. And there, seated in the center of the hall, was the Queen. She looked different from the images he had seen. Up close, her regal presence was undeniable. But there was also something softer in her expression, something that contrasted with the ruthless reputation she had earned. Her eyes locked onto his, and the soldier couldn't help but feel the pull of her gaze. "I wanted to thank you," the Queen said, her voice cool, yet laced with an undeniable edge of sincerity. "You saved my life when no one else could." "I owe you more than you know." The soldier stood still, unsure of how to respond. This wasn't a conversation he had ever imagined himself having. He had been trained to fight, to follow orders, not to engage with the enemy, especially not someone like her. "I don't understand," he finally said, his voice low. "Why would you thank me? I'm just a soldier." "You're the Queen. I don't deserve this." The Queen smiled, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. It was something different. She regarded him with an almost searching look, as if she was weighing him carefully. "You saved me," she repeated. "And now I have a question for you." "Do you remember me?" The soldier's mind reeled. Remember her? Remember her? How could he? He had never seen her before that battle. Not truly. He had only heard stories. Stories of her power, her ruthlessness. He could barely fathom why she would ask such a question. But as he looked into her eyes, something deep within him stirred. A feeling that he couldn't quite place, a strange recognition. He swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. I don't know," he said honestly. The Queen's gaze softened slightly, and she leaned back in her seat. "That is the question I wanted answered," she said quietly. "And I believe the answer lies in the past." The soldier stood in silence, unsure of what he had just stepped into. The story of his life had just taken a turn he never could have imagined, and as the Queen's words hung in the air, he couldn't help but feel that everything had changed in that one moment. The soldier stood in the Queen's presence, still unsure of what to make of the conversation. The question she had asked him, "Do you remember me?" echoed in his mind. He had never seen her before, not in person. He knew her by reputation, by the stories the soldiers told when gathered around campfires. The Queen was a legend, a leader of the enemy empire, and yet there was something different about the way she spoke to him. There was no anger, no hostility. She wasn't treating him like an enemy at all. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. The Queen watched him with a calm intensity, her gaze never leaving his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, as if both were waiting for the other to make a move.
"I'm sorry," the soldier finally said, breaking the silence. "I don't remember you."
"I've only ever seen you on the battlefield. You're a queen."
A leader of your people.
Why would I? The Queen raised a hand, silencing him. Her expression softened, and she leaned forward slightly in her chair. You are not the first human to say that to me. Yet, there is something about you, a connection I cannot explain. It's more than just saving my life in that battle. She paused, her eyes darkening slightly. I believe you have a part to play in something greater, a part that neither of us can understand just yet.
The soldier felt a shiver run down his spine.
Her words were strange, cryptic even. Was she trying to manipulate him? He couldn't be sure. He had been trained to think critically, to question everything, especially when it came to someone like her. But there was a sincerity in her voice that he couldn't deny. The Queen wasn't the cold, ruthless figure he had imagined. She was human in some ways. Her eyes, full of something deeper than the desire for power, made him hesitate.
I don't understand, he said.
What do you mean by a connection? The Queen sighed, leaning back in her throne. The expression on her face was one of resignation, as if she had expected this confusion. There are ancient stories, she began, her voice distant. Stories passed down among my people. Stories of a time before the wars. A time when humans and my kind were allies. It is said that there was a bond between us, one that was broken long ago. But there are those who believe the bond can be repaired, that somehow, in this war, we will come together again. The soldier's heart raced. He had heard rumors of alliances between different species in the past, but he had always dismissed them as myths. The history of the galaxy was filled with conflict and betrayal, not peace. The idea that his people and the Queen's race had once been allies seemed impossible. You believe that? He asked, skeptical. Spectacle.
That humans and your people could ever work together again? The Queen met his gaze, her expression hardening. I don't know.
But the stories are clear. They say that when the time is right, there will be one who brings the two races together. Someone who will heal the rift and unite us against those who seek to destroy us both. The soldier shook his head.
But I'm just a soldier. I'm not the person you're talking about.
The Queen's lips curled into a faint smile. Perhaps.
Or perhaps you are exactly who I need.
She stood up, her long dark robes flowing behind her as she moved with grace and purpose. She crossed the room to stand in front of the soldier, looking down at him. The air between them seemed to charge with unspoken words. You saved my life, she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. That is more than any of your commanders or generals have ever done. And yet, you are here, speaking with me, not as an enemy, but as a person. That, soldier, means something. The soldier's mind raced. He couldn't ignore the tension between them, the strange connection that seemed to grow with every word. Could it be possible that this was more than just fate, more than some strange twist of luck that had led him to this point? The Queen looked down at him, her gaze piercing. I know you have questions, but you must understand this. The war we fight is not the true enemy. There are greater forces at work, ones that neither of us fully understands. Forces that seek to use this war to control everything. They are the true threat, not me.
Not you!
He had always believed that the enemy was the Empire, the Queen's people, and that they were the ones to defeat. But now, hearing her words, he began to wonder if there was more to the story.
If everything he had been told about the enemy had been a lie,
the Queen took a step back, turning toward a large holographic map that hovered in the center of the room. The map showed the galaxy, with different sectors lit up in red and blue, representing the various alliances and territories. She pointed to a small area near the edge of the map. "This is where the true battle will be fought," she said, her voice steady. "Not in the heart of the galaxy, but at its edges. The war we fight now is only a distraction. It keeps us focused on the wrong things."
the real fight will come when we are ready to face the truth.
The soldier stared at the map, his mind racing. What was she talking about? What truth? The truth about the galaxy. The truth about your people. The truth about my people, the Queen continued, her voice quiet but filled with determination. It's a truth that will either save us or destroy us. He was just one man, one soldier in a war that seemed to have no end. But now, standing in front of the Queen, he wondered if his role in this war was something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Was he truly the one to bring about the change she spoke of? Was he the one to repair the broken bond between their races? He didn't have the answers. But one thing was clear. His life had changed forever. And the Queen, the very being he had fought against, had somehow become the key to understanding it all. The soldier stood still as the Queen's words echoed in his mind. The truth she spoke of felt distant, like a puzzle with pieces scattered across the stars. He had always believed in the mission, in the war he was fighting. But now, standing before the Queen, it all seemed different. She wasn't the enemy he had been trained to fight. She wasn't the threat he thought she was. Instead, she was someone who spoke of a deeper truth, a truth that could change everything. The soldier couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn into something much bigger than himself. He was just a soldier, a cog in the machine of war. But the way the Queen spoke, the weight in her words, made him feel like his actions had consequences far beyond the battlefield.
"Do you understand?"
the Queen asked, her voice cutting through his thoughts. He nodded slowly, but he wasn't sure he did understand. Not fully. There were too many unanswered questions, too many pieces of the puzzle missing. "I think I understand," he said, his voice uncertain. "But what do we do now? How can we stop the war if we don't even know who the real enemy is?" The Queen's gaze softened as she took a step closer. "That is the challenge," she replied. "The war we fight is not the one we should be focused on. It is the distraction. The true enemy is hidden in the shadows, pulling the strings, using this war to create chaos, to control us all." The soldier's heart raced as he tried to grasp what she was saying. For as long as he could remember, his people had fought against the empire she led. They had been taught to believe that the Queen and her forces were the enemy. Now, she was telling him that it was all a lie. But if that was true, who or what was the real enemy? "The galaxy is at a crossroads," the Queen continued. "We can continue to fight this war, destroy each other, and fall into the hands of those who want to control everything. Or we can unite.
We can face the true threat together. The soldier's mind swirled with the weight of her words.
He had never considered the possibility of peace between their people. But now, with everything she had said, he couldn't ignore the growing sense that perhaps there was a way forward, a way to end the cycle of violence and hatred.
"Do you really believe it's possible?"
the soldier asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we really trust each other after everything that's happened?" The Queen looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and sorrow. "It won't be easy," she said. "But it is possible we are not so different, you and I. We both want the same thing. Peace. The choice is yours, soldier. You can walk away,
Return to your army and continue to fight for what you've been told is right. Or you can stay and help me bring an end to this war."
The soldier's heart pounded in his chest as he thought about his decision. He had never imagined being in this position.
He had always followed orders, always fought for the cause he believed in. But now, he was being asked to make a choice that would change everything. Could he really trust the Queen? Could he risk everything for a chance at peace? The Queen didn't wait for him to answer. Instead, she turned toward the holographic map, her fingers brushing over the image of the galaxy. "The time to act is now," she said, her voice filled with determination. "The forces behind this war are moving quickly."
We must be ready.
The soldier stepped closer, his mind racing. "What do we do?" he asked, finally feeling like he could see a glimmer of a way forward. The Queen looked back at him, her eyes steady.
We fight, but not in the way you think. We do not fight each other.
"We fight the true enemy, the ones who seek to control us. We strike at their power, at the heart of their operations.
We expose them for what they are."
The soldier nodded, the weight of the decision settling over him. It was risky, dangerous, and he wasn't sure they would succeed. But something deep inside him told him that this was the only way. They had to work together, or they would all fall. The Queen stepped back, her expression serious. "I will need your help, soldier. You may not believe it now, but your actions have already set things in motion."
You saved my life for a reason. Now we must save the galaxy.
The soldier looked at her, his heart still racing, but now with a sense of purpose.
"What do we need to do?" The Queen smiled faintly, but there was no triumph in her eyes, only resolve. "We start by infiltrating the heart of the enemy's operations."
"We gather the allies we need, and we expose their plans. We show the galaxy who the real enemy is." The soldier knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be danger, deception, and betrayal. But he also knew one thing for certain. The war he had been fighting wasn't the real battle. The real battle was yet to come, and he was going to be a part of it. He had made his choice. He would fight for peace, even if it meant standing by the Queen. His enemy, the future of the galaxy, depended on it. As they turned toward the map, preparing for the next steps, the soldier felt a strange sense of unity with the Queen. They were both fighting for something bigger than themselves. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead.